If that hasn't gotten people to wake up yet, what will? Wake up and realize these people don't care about you. The Libertarian Party is the only party that actually cares about your rights to liberty and freedom. What's up, North Carolina, and welcome back to the Liberty Inc. podcast, your source to all things liberty in NC. And it has been a long time, but I'm your host, Mike Ross, and I'm here with Matthew Laszacs. He is running for the North Carolina Senate in District 14 out of Wake County, and I am excited coming out of the most recent 2022 LPNC convention. We have got a lot of candidates running for the General Assembly here coming out of Wake County, and I think that is fantastic. And we're kicking off with our first one here. Matthew, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. So I'm really excited about meeting you as well as the rest of the Wake candidates and really talking about what your vision is. I talked a little bit, and you said, you mentioned to me one big theme that's a part of your campaign is choice. I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit more about that. I know that it's pretty multifaceted, but when you think of, what Wake voters should look for in you when they think of you wanting to bring choice back and restoring choice to Wake voters. What does that mean? Why are you the guy to bring that into Wake County and the state?
Sure. Well, I think it comes down to the philosophy of, do we really need politicians making decisions in all of the aspects of our daily and personal and business lives that they do? And I think the answer is no. I think that when we see, a lot of government involvement in our lives, it leads to a worse result. Really, individuals know what's best for themselves. They know what's best for their families. And by extension, when they make good decisions for themselves and their families, they make good decisions for their communities. Nobody knows how to better direct resources, educate their children, provide a living for themselves better than an individual. But we have a government that increasingly wants to dictate these things to us for a number of reasons, and a lot of them are good, but good intentions don't always net a good result. And we have to trust our fellow citizens to make the best decisions for themselves and their families, and that's a key point for me.
Awesome. Well, I want to dig in a little bit, man. You kind of hit on something that's really important to me just in the first thing. So I'm a homeschool dad. Right, I run a business, but I homeschool my fifth grader, and it has been, a big blessing. And I recently saw that North Carolina is thinking about making my life a little bit more difficult as a homeschooling parent, right? And I made that decision a little bit before COVID, and it worked out great. And my son's loving it. His standardized test scores are going up. He's overall more happy, and I'm kicking myself for thinking, why did I wait until fourth grade to start this? School choice means a lot of things to a lot of different people. What does that look like for you specifically, and what would that look like when it comes to legislation, right? If you're elected, what will your voice be when it comes to choice in that area of specifically relating to schooling?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head that you found what works best in your particular situation for your child. That's how we should write our legislation. Why do we have a one-size-fits-all system that forces everybody to, go to a single school or into a single system? People are diverse. Children are certainly diverse. They have very different needs, and only parents can know best what those needs are and how to best address them. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't be funding schools. I'm saying that we should be allowing parents to make a decision how they use those funds to direct their educational dollars to the best system for their children. We have a lot of government programs in place. I think one of them is SNAP benefits. We provide people money for nutrition, but we don't run the grocery stores as the government. So why does government need to run education? They don't. What we need to do is trust parents to know their children, to be able to interface with teachers and administrators and send their kids to the best possible school or to utilize the best educational opportunities that they have available to them. When we allow parents to fund their children's education, they will make better choices.
Yeah, no, I like that. So the idea is essentially, we hear a lot of it, but basically, if you look at the math behind it, right, there's a finite number of dollars. And even though I'm a homeschool, I'm a property owner, so I'm still very much paying for my son to go to public school, even though he doesn't go. But the idea that essentially the dollars follow the student, that's one that a lot of times in the school choice movement, is that something that you generally support? Like, if there's this X amount of dollars, right, if I choose to send my son to public school because I have a great public school that's right near me that has great graduation rates and great tuitions, I can send them there. Or if there's a private school, whether it's secular, religious, doesn't matter, I send them there. Or if I want to choose to do homeschool and purchase a curriculum online and tools and resources, is that kind of your vision, that you allocate it to the student, and if the school that's run by the government, whether public school system, if that is the best solution for a particular student, then that's where it goes. But if for whatever reason the parent who knows that student is best thinks it should go elsewhere, is that kind of your vision for what that should look like as far as education funding?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. We fund students, not school systems. That allows parents to, determine what's best for their children. And, what's best for them now might not be what's best for them down the road. Their situation may change. But if we allow parents to make smart decisions for their children based on what is going to be, net the best outcome for them, then as a whole, the system will get better, because those funds will naturally be directed to the places where they return the most value. Anytime you have a bureaucratic organization in between the consumer and the business, in this case the school system, and the parent, then those decisions become muddy, and we don't end up allocating resources the most efficient way that we can. So I think that's exactly right. We give parents the educational dollars. We let them determine the best place to spend those dollars, because they're closest to the needs of their children and interfacing directly with the people that they're purchasing the educational services from. They will naturally make the best decisions, and those dollars will naturally flow to the best possible solutions.
No, I like it, and I think that idea. One, it's just relevant for me as a parent, right? Who's kind of in there, but a lot of times most libertarians generally agree that competition is good for the market. It doesn't matter whether it's milk or gasoline or anything else, and education is one of those areas where competition's not even really a factor, at least when it comes to the public school system, right? Because for rich kids, right, who can afford to send their to send their kids to private schools, maybe they don't even try to compete on a performance level, but they almost don't have to, right? Because there's no chance that the kids who maybe are not as economically blessed have an alternative, where if they look at it and say, okay, maybe like a small neighborhood micro school might be the right solution, or homeschooling, or a charter school, whatever it may be. If those parents say, well, hey, look, this local school district, which may just not be getting good results, but another educational opportunity may exist. Well, if that gets funded, now it almost forces that public school to either get better or go away, right? Like you either come up and compete and put out a quality product, or what are you doing in the first place, right? If you're not preparing students to go out into the world and become equipped to live as adults in America, what's the system really doing, right? If it's not accomplishing some of those basic fundamental things. So I've really been a big fan of the school choice movement, and I think a lot of libertarians have. But one thing I thought that was big is, I don't want to when we were first just chatting for a few minutes before we started filming, you kind of said that choice is a big recurring theme in your platform. So, school choice, you're not going to get any pushback from me. I fully support that. I wish you were, running in my district so I could vote for you, Matthew. But let's kind of expand on that a little further. And what do you mean when you say to voters that you want to give them choice outside of the school side? What are some of the other things that choice means from your campaign?
So I think, yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important for us to be able to utilize our natural skills and abilities to create wealth and to feed our families and take care of our families. So choice of, how we apply our natural abilities to our benefit is absolutely critical. So I would say that, occupational licensing laws, zoning laws, things that prevent us from, making the best choice for our work lives and for our families and where we live are critical as well.
No. So what you're saying is, as long as I'm not in an HOA, if you were making the decisions, I could paint my shed whatever color I wanted, as long as I was not under that, because it's mine, and I'd kind of have the choice, as long as I'm not, harming or doing things. Is that kind of the idea, that you think that the choice should not be made by governments really at that level for things that could better be made at the individual level? Is that kind of the thought there?
I think it's a hallmark of our country, that we have, a right to our private property, and to use that private property. As long as we're not harming somebody else, we should be able to use that property to our benefit. If we want to subdivide our property and upgrade it so that, we can put apartments in the property and make some money off of it, that's fine. From decisions like that all the way down to what kind of bush do I want to put in my yard, I think anybody would have a hard time making a rational argument for why we can or can't put a certain kind of planter or tree in our yards, or what color we paint our house. But even more critically, I own that property. If I own it, I put my capital into that property. I should be able to realize a benefit from that property.
Sure.
And when we get into the not in my backyard scenarios, and we get into government actors who are complicit in protecting the NIMBY crowd, we prevent people from making the best decisions on how to use their property. I know right now in my district, housing is an issue, and I'm sure there are lots of ways that we could be providing additional housing opportunities if we're allowed to use our property to, sublet for the Airbnb folks. There's numerous ways that we can better utilize our private property, and I would definitely support people doing that and oppose government intervention and people making the best economic use of their hard-earned private property.
Okay. Well, no, I like that, and Matthew, we've never met before today, right? But you kind of hit on something that's been a local issue for me, where I've been working with a pastor who's been trying to shelter homeless people in the city of Gastonia, which is close to where I live. And it's pretty awful to see, like, the local government is basically doing everything they can to stop him, when really it just comes down to, like, these people exist, they're here, right? They're going to be either sleeping outside in a tent, or let me open it up. And the city's really a hard time, and they're using obscure fire codes and everything they can to do this. And a lot of it comes down to the not in my backyard crowd, people who are like, I don't want that. I know I've got my beliefs where I think, if you take care of the most vulnerable, and you do that, people tend to get desperate, and when they're in that situation. And desperate people are dangerous. You can take a primarily peaceful person, and when you put desperation of food scarcity and shelter and some of those basic needs, you can turn the normally most safe person into a dangerous person. And I think people are like, concerned. So are you really kind of against all zoning laws? I mean, I know that there's varying degrees in libertarian circles of kind of just a little bit of rollback of government to I'm very much more towards the minarchist anarchist side within the party, so I probably might be a little more radical than most people. But what are your thoughts as far as, I guess, the role when it comes to zoning and private property? Are you as radical in me in saying there should be no zoning laws, or are you probably a little less radical than that?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I don't think it's a radical idea. I don't think you're radical at all. I think you're spot on.
Well, thank you.
So the idea that a church can open a homeless shelter to help people and to solve a problem, and yet a government that purports to exist to provide a safety net as one of its core reasons for existence won't allow that to happen. That doesn't make any rational sense at all. So I just don't think that is radical. I think that that's in fact, highly rational. And I think that that pastor of that church should not be needing to climb a mountain of government bureaucracy to try to help people in his community. That's just totally ridiculous. And so, yeah, I think that there are a lot of issues with zoning laws. I do respect that cities should have some ability to, foreclose on derelict properties and some minimal regulations like that. But
Okay.
they should be minimal and they should be guarded. And I think it's a very important job of the North Carolina General Assembly to provide oversight of those types of regulations.
Yeah, and you hit on another one too. I mean, I love what I'm hearing, and Matthew, I'm sad I don't live in Wake because I can't vote for you, because I wish I had somebody that I agree with on position so much that I could vote for here in Gaston County. But I want to talk about occupational licensing, because you mentioned it, right? And I think that's a big one where some people, you hear the idea, and I heard some people when I say that, I'm generally against occupational licensing, they try to take it to the most extreme and say, oh, so you just want doctors to have no licensing of any kind. Anybody they want can just cut into somebody. And I think that's a little hyperbolic, and I'm not sure that people that are taking that argument are arguing in good faith. But I think that the people who are trying to do that are really not paying attention to some of the real impacts of occupational licensing. Talk to me a little bit, as if I know nothing about this topic. When you say choice in occupational licensing, what does that mean for you, and what does it mean for people in Wake County? What can they expect when you say you're going to fight for occupational licensing?
So first of all,
or against,
I really like what you said. Yeah, I like what you said about the argument against occupational licensing. Doctors having no certification, and that's a straw man, and let's identify that for what it is. So I'll just take this moment to tell anybody who might be watching this podcast that I will not ever engage in straw man tactics, creating a boogeyman that doesn't exist to argue a point, because it's pointless to argue something against something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So let's be clear on that. Just if you receive that kind of feedback from people, just help them understand that that's a fantasy.
Yeah.
Let's not argue against a fantasy position. I do think that there is an important place for, we'll just use AMA, for example. But when that becomes a problem is when they effectively block innovation, or from people with new ideas from providing better services to people. And, there's a lot of healthcare innovation that I think can take place in our state, but we need to remove some of the barriers to get that done. I think I recall reading a story about a gentleman in Winston-Salem that came up with a lower cost MRI, and he was blocked from providing that service, not because the service was dangerous. It wasn't dangerous at all. It was an MRI, and people really responded to it and needed that service, but our occupational licensing got in the way and blocked that from happening, and now people are forced to go back to a hospital and pay a lot more money and wait in line, and all of it was just not, it was a better service and it would have helped people. But, our government allowed the occupational licensing laws to prevent that service from, providing benefit to the people of the state. Those are the types of scenarios that we need to be closely monitoring and preventing from happening.
Yeah, and I think the big one too, and I use the hyperbolic one because sometimes people just push back with that one. I think a bigger one that impacts regular people is just all sorts of things, all sorts of smaller ones. Cutting hair, doing nails, hair braiding, all of these different things where they put all these layers of requirements to get this certification, and really all it comes down to, in my opinion, again, call me radical. A lot of people consider me really. I think it's extortion by the state, right? Like, I'm going to tell you, who might have been doing this for 20 years somewhere else, that you have to come learn to do it under this government mandated program. You're going to have to pay me to do that. And if you don't, I'm not going to let you do it. But somehow we lose track of all of this, that if you want to do it for free, you can do it for free with no questions asked. That's relevant, and that's what I think most people kind of, when you go down the occupational licensing, maybe some people are like, okay, maybe we do need it for some of these real high skill fields like a surgeon, but people don't understand this goes all the way into so many industries. And would you like to see that kind of just scaled back across the board? Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Why do we need to jump through a million flaming hoops of bureaucracy to braid hair? That is the definition of silliness. And I think that the government's logic for stating that they wish to protect people and protect the quality of service is 180 degrees wrong when you consider that the best way to provide better products and services to people is to allow people with the skills to do it, to do the job. We know from our business 101 that competition improves products and services. Yeah. So if we put a artificial government barrier in between people and their ability to provide a better product or service, what we're really doing is harming the consumer in a much worse fashion than we are protecting them from, again, the boogeyman. I guess you could get hurt in hair braiding. I'm not quite sure what that is, but purportedly they wish to protect us from the dangers of hair braiding. Yet what really happens is the people that are braiding hair now that may be not as good as others are going to continue providing that service and preventing somebody from that may do a better job from entering the industry and providing a lower cost or a better service.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. So I would love to see the same thing, right? And again, people argue that straw man of that you said, and I like that you're not going to argue the straw man at all. And I think that that's a great thing that I need to personally do more of in my life, because sometimes I feel the need to like break down the straw man, and I'm like, I shouldn't even give it the engagement of even trying to show why it's a straw man, right? Because someone who's putting up a straw man knows they're putting up a straw man when they're doing it. It's not a good faith decision. So so we've covered choice in education, right? Choice in property ownership, choice in economic decisions when it comes to occupational licensing. Are there any other kind of choice items that you want to talk on here?
Yeah, I think we all have kind of forgotten, as when I say we, I mean voters, that we have the power of choice when we go vote. I think that is probably one of the most critical tools that we have in our arsenal to keep government in check. I think it's very, very important for us to understand that we don't have to pick between the mumps or the measles. It is not a binary choice. There are many, many good candidates, whether they're Libertarian or Republican or Democrat or Green or whatever party they might be running in. There are individuals, not parties, that have good things to offer the voting public, and you have a choice to vote for the person that you think will best represent you in a given government office. So when we make this argument, I hear it all the time, well, I have to vote for the Republican or the Democrat, because if I don't, then I threw my vote away. That is absolutely wrong, because if we all vote for the candidates, the individual candidates, not the party that we agree with, we will change things. We will hold them accountable because they pay attention to who you're voting for. And I think that we've forgotten that. So I would encourage everyone to remember that you do have the power of choice. We get the government we deserve. When we allow the parties to dictate to us every election who we're going to vote for, and position it that if you don't vote for one of us, then you're throwing your vote away, then that's on us. We get the government we deserve. So let's remember that we do have the power of choice, and we should go and vote for the candidate, the individual, not the party that we think will best serve our interests.
That's such a powerful statement, and people don't really think about it, but if you go back to 2016, I use this one because it's a very polarizing election, right? Where people made it out that it was the end of the world if you didn't pick their candidate, right? Which I guess the Republicans and Democrats are going to do that every election. But someone posted this thing, and it may be the same in 2020. I just haven't fact checked it and independently verified the numbers myself. So I'm going to go back to 2016. But in 2016, if did not vote was on the ticket, we would not have had a president. That literally more people in the United States said neither of these two people is worth voting for, so I'm not going to vote. If that was a measured check on the ballot box, right? How many people reject this entire ballot? That's who would have been the president, and we wouldn't have had to deal with the Trump, Clinton, or anything that came from that. How do we, right? And I know it's probably a bigger issue for you, Matthew, than it is for me, since you're running for office and I'm not. But how do we reach those did not vote? Because if we understand that that's true at the national level, right? That could have won President of the United States. That tells me that. And when I looked at the data, it was like an electoral landslide. It's not like did not vote just barely got the 270. It was like maybe one or two states that an actual candidate would have beaten did not vote, right? How do we engage those voters, Matthew, especially like in Wake County in this election? Because I look especially with the slate of candidates that Wake has, and I wish at some point LP Gaston, I hope we can get to that point within a few years that I can, but the Republicans, the Democrats, there's going to be some tribalism. I think there's definitely some room to reach them and bring them over to the ideas of libertarianism. But I think there's a big pool in that unaffiliated and did not vote. How do we, how do you, but also how do any other candidates and me as just, someone who wants to advocate for libertarian principles and candidates, how do we do that? What's that look like?
Well, I think, I'll make a little bit of an assumption, and I think it's probably a fairly accurate one, that a lot of those people are just disgusted with our political system. We have a polarized political system, and the reason that it's polarized is because each of these parties believes in this myth. And it's the myth that, the majority of this country is Democrat, or the majority of this country is really Republican, or the majority of this country is conservative or liberal. And if only we can, get our way and get into office and jam these, our polarized ideas down the other guy's throat, eventually we're going to win that battle and convert enough people in this country to, some mythical conservative majority or liberal majority or even libertarian majority. I think the fact is plain and simple that there isn't a majority of anybody when it comes to that in this country. So I think that there's a lot of independents out there and a lot of people that just don't vote because they're disgusted with our system. They're disgusted with the, it's my way or the highway. There's winners and losers. We're the winner right now, so we're going to jam everything down your throat, and if you don't like it, tough. Right. That's not a positive environment for us to get anything done. And I just believe that a lot of people are totally disgusted with it, so they throw their hands up and they walk away, and they don't participate. I come close to being that person myself, but I have to look at the situation and be objective and say, well, is this the right thing to do, or should I just go vote for the candidate that I like? And I'm not throwing my vote away. And we have to deliver that message to others out there that may feel the same way. I think it's also important in how we engage potential voters, because there's a lot of dirty tricks in politics, building the straw man and arguing it when clearly the other side had something of value to say, but you overlook the value in what they say and you focus in on something, their weakest point or a point they didn't even make, sure. So they should get the slam dunk win. Everybody's trying to one up each other and dunk on each other and go for the fireworks and totally destroy their opponent. Those are short-term gains. It may work well in a national presidential debate, but it doesn't do anything to win the proverbial hearts and minds of people that we want to engage in politics. So I think that we have to be very diligent about not participating in the dirty tricks in the same old political tactics. If we want to appeal to a core group of voters on one side or the other, sure, those tactics make sense because you said it, there's tribalism. And if you're in one tribe or the other, you're looking to, slam dunk on the other tribe and get a win. I think what we're trying to do as libertarians is appeal to people that, want to see something change in a meaningful way and win the war, not the battle. So I think it's critical that we take the harder road, but the right road, and not engage in the dirty tricks.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is the part I want to shift a little bit to kind of some plugging some things. So Matthew, our primary audience on this podcast is the Libertarians in North Carolina, right? This is a podcast that is property and a production of the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. Now, I know that being in Wake, you have what I consider. Everybody else, and I know I love you, Mecklenburg. I love you, Gaston. But Wake has, in my opinion, the best run county affiliate in the state of North Carolina. Someone can criticize me, but hey, it's my show. I'm the host, and Travis and the rest of the crew out there has given me evidence, and I think it's objective. But in running a campaign, we know that it takes a lot of things, right? It takes money, it takes people, it takes group effort. If there are some libertarians here in North Carolina, hopefully Wake, and I'm sure Wake is doing everything they can there, but let's say we reach somebody in Buncombe or in Mecklenburg or here in Gaston. What do opportunities look like for us to either volunteer to help your campaign, donate to your campaign? How can libertarians in North Carolina best come alongside and help you in this campaign, Matthew?
So regrettably, for the first time in my life, I've started a Facebook page.
Okay.
I held my nose. I don't generally enjoy social media and haven't really participated in it outside of a LinkedIn page for work.
Congratulations. Sorry to interrupt you, but congratulations, because I wish I had that. Sorry. No, thank you. So I say that jokingly, but I have made my first ever Facebook page. That will be up soon, and that's probably the best place to engage. I'll be posting things that I'm doing there, and I would certainly welcome any support that anyone would like to provide. I think what I would ask for, maybe more than anything else outside of that, is just share your ideas with me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's important to people in your areas. What are people worried about? And if anybody in District 14 is listening or watching this podcast, tell me what's going on in Wendell. Tell me what's going on in Garner or what's going on in Knightdale. I live in downtown Raleigh, so I have a pretty good understanding of what's happening down here, and I talk to people. But that would be very beneficial to me. And also just share your ideas. I really, really, really love having a good conversation with open-minded people who are able to discuss things. And if you have a liberal or a conservative or a libertarian idea, share that with me, but let's talk about it. Let's have a real discussion where we listen to each other and we talk about whatever it is that's important to you. So I don't want people to think I'm only interested in hearing the libertarian side. I would really, really appreciate engaging with people from different viewpoints that are able to have a real conversation. That I hunger for that, and I think a lot of people do. So awesome. Okay, so once that's up, if you're watching this, because I'm not posting this within the next day or so, it'll probably go out the Sunday after we record it. If you can get me those, I will try to put a link to Matthew's Facebook in the description if you're watching this on our YouTube. So please go follow him. And how's that for a political candidate asking for what I think is probably the most important contribution, but really the easiest, right? He's not asking you to go knock on doors for him. He didn't even ask you for money. He said, come on to his Facebook page and engage, share your ideas. That is something I've never heard a politician ask for before, Matthew. And I think that if every politician or future politician heard what you said and does exactly that, we're going to move our country in a much better direction. Because I think we have a problem where a lot of politicians don't want to listen to what the voters in their district, and you hit on something really, really big too, not just the libertarians, right? If you're a progressive, if you're a conservative, Matthew wants to hear from you. And Matthew, I've only met you here for this one. I didn't see you at convention, but I like you. I want to chat with you. I'm already, thinking, how are we going to chat after this? And I could tell you the similar things in Gaston, right? Because if you win, at the end of the day, you're representing the state, right? It's not like you're just going to be representing your district. So then it becomes, not only wanting to hear the rest of your district outside of the downtown Raleigh, but hopefully from across the state. So I implore you, if this link is in the description, and I promise you, as soon as Matthew gets to me and this is uploaded, it will be there. Go give him a follow. Go engage. Share your ideas and engage in good faith discussion, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. Any other topics that you want to cover here? As a candidate, I don't want to lead this too much there. Is there kind of any closing thoughts or anything that you want to hit on or cover before we let this go? And I want to be respectful of your time too. And yeah.
Well, I can talk a lot, so I might bloviate you to death. I think the only thing maybe we didn't touch on was some of the criminal justice reform things.
Yes, let's go. Yeah, that's a big one, and you mentioned it kind of that was the one that the choice piece doesn't come. Let's go into criminal justice reform. Again, we've got. I'm probably far more on the very radical side, as self-described, straddling the line between minarchist and anarchist. What are the most important criminal justice reform elements that you'd be advocating for and bringing with your campaign?
Sure. So I'm going to touch on police reform first, just because it's such a hot topic.
Yeah.
I will say that I don't think it's the root of the problem, but I think there are probably some things we can do there, or the proverbial low-hanging fruit to try to help with that problem. And there's a lot of community mistrust between law enforcement and a lot of our communities. And I think that's primarily driven by too many laws. I'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
I do want to say this. I support our law enforcement. I think that the vast majority of these people are working very, very hard to genuinely try to help their communities, but they're doing it in terrible conditions that our politicians have created. And so they're fighting against that. And then there are other challenges. And there's some things that I think we can do to kind of curtail some of the bad behavior by the very, very extreme minority of our law enforcement individuals. So I'm definitely a proponent of limiting qualified immunity. I don't think that police should go bankrupt as a result of civil lawsuits, but I do think that it makes rational sense to allow people to go and seek damages when their constitutional rights have been violated by a bad actor. So that's very important to me. I think other things that law enforcement does that need to be curtailed is a lot of the Fourth Amendment violations. I think one of the most heinous things that we do is participate in federal asset forfeiture sharing. So the state has done a good job of saying that we can't do this at a state level. However, there is nothing right now to stop law enforcement from partnering up with a federal agency and stealing people's money and property, and then perversely partaking of 80% of it, up to. So
almost like a commission for stealing money.
For stealing money, exactly. And for those out there that may not be familiar with what civil asset forfeiture is, it is when law enforcement can seize money or your property without ever charging you with anything. And I wouldn't say you can't get it back, but it's very, very difficult to get it back. And there's a perverse drive to do that if you can benefit from it financially. So I have heard people say, hey, from the other side or from the law enforcement community, say, hey, this is a very valuable tool for us. Well, fine. It's a valuable tool for you to participate in the federal asset forfeiture sharing. We'll just remove the sharing part. Participate with the feds. Help them do whatever their mission is if you believe that there's some value in it. But that money doesn't go to law enforcement. It goes to the general fund or to the educational fund. And to me, that is a nice compromise. still allows you to use the tool if you feel that it's important to you and it's a helpful crime prevention tool, but it removes the perverse drive to take the money.
Yeah, no, civil asset forfeiture is a big one. I saw this. I saw someone put it out. I think it was either Reason or Cato, so I don't want to push back but I haven't independently checked this one, so I just like to put that out because anytime you say something on a podcast, people are going to ask. But I believe I saw where they said that it was a very recently, but for the first time, the total value of property seized under civil asset forfeiture exceeded the amount of property stolen through crime. Like, you add up the total value of like bank robberies and all of these other things of theft of either money or property, right? And for the first time, civil asset forfeiture exceeded the total amount of money. So essentially, the government's now stolen more from Americans than criminals have stolen from Americans. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with the problem, right? Is if a local police department says, okay, we don't have the authority to just go in here, we stopped this guy, he's got $50,000 in cash. We don't have the authority to take it. But, if we call the DEA or a federal agency and say, hey, this might be drug money. I saw a case there where there was no evidence it was drug money, but they just took this money off of there. And then, the guy had to spend years fighting to get his life savings back. But if you pull away that perverse financial incentive, I wonder, have you gotten feedback when people who have kind of pushed back, what did you give them that response of, but this is good, well, what if you didn't share in it, right? If it all went to a general fund or a roads fund or a help the poor fund or, anything other than, buy you new, a new SWAT vehicle, right? What was their response, just out of curiosity?
The response is, I generally get something along the lines of, this is just another attempt to defund the police. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a lot of, from those that feel that this is an important tool for law enforcement. I'm generally lumped into the defund the police crowd. Couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
That's not a defund the police activity. And again, I get a straw man, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's well.
And it was frustrating because, the police and law enforcement say that they want to make amends with the community and start building trust again. How can you build trust when you're stealing money from people? And how can you build trust when there's a bad actor and sometimes repeated bad actors that go without any real punishment? How can you build trust with no-knock warrants? How can you build trust when you're actively doing things that are immoral? And I think most rational people, when you discuss these topics with them, would agree that these aren't things that we should be allowing our law enforcement to do. So what I'm saying is, well, let's just stop doing it. But just solve the problem. Here's a problem we can easily solve. Theoretically, it should be easy to solve these problems. Yeah. So let's just solve these problems.
Awesome. Well, Matthew, do you have a website? I know that you said that you're mainly looking for contributions of ideas, but the reality is it does cost money to run for things. Is there somewhere that listeners can donate? Is that set up yet, or is that something that's coming?
Yes, I will have a website up soon. It's matt4nc.org, and there's a hyphen between Matt and between for and NC. So Matt-4-NC. Unfortunately, Matt for NC is already taken. So
okay, I'm sure if I went with Mike for NC, that's taken too. It's the problem of having a common name, I guess. So Matt-4-NC.org, and once that's up, I will put it in the link or in the description of this podcast as well. And I take it you'll have the donation links and all of the traditional things there on the campaign page once it's up.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for making some time to chat with me today. Best of luck in the race for Senate North Carolina Senate 14. I really hope that voters can hear the message because if they give libertarians a chance, I think you'd be really pleasantly surprised with some of the results, the tangible results. Whether you're on the left or the right, I'd argue that libertarians, and specifically Matt in this case, would probably actually vote for more things that you care about than your Democrat or your Republican would, right? Like, you may consider yourself a Republican or a Democrat, and they may tell you all the things that they want, but when's the last time Republicans or Democrats really actually did anything for you? And I'm with it, Matthew. I hope that the voters, will see that, give you a chance, and I would be honored if the people of Wake County would elect you to the General Assembly, because I know I would feel better as a North Carolina resident having you here in the Senate. So I want to just give it to you. If you got any closing thoughts for 2 minutes or so, they're yours.
Well, first of all, very, very well said. And also thank you for giving me this opportunity to have my voice reach some people that listen to this podcast and people in the state. I greatly appreciate it. The last thing that I would say is, please go vote and vote for the candidate that you feel will best represent you.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much. It was great chatting with you. I'd love to connect with you more after this. I feel like there's so much more we can chat about that maybe is not for the podcast. But thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as we get closer to campaign season, if there's ever anything that you want to, come back on, you're welcome. You know how to get in touch with me. I'd love to have you back on. But thank you so much, and best of luck in the campaign, Matthew.
Thank you very much, Mike.
All right. And to all our listeners, we will hopefully see you next week. We got a lot of people lined up. I do want to get this podcast back to being pretty consistent and regular. So we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much, and don't stop fighting for liberty.